welcome to Digital Shift, also known as Corporate Evolution Tales. Join us as we dive into the dynamic world of digital transformation. From illuminating case studies to captivating narratives, we uncover the stories behind companies' journeys toward digital excellence. Whether you are a seasoned corporate leader or an aspiring innovator, our podcast explores the shifts, challenges of modern business evolution. Hello everyone, this is another episode of Digital Shifts, aka Corporate Evolution Tales, and today my guest is Zach. Zach, thank you so much for accepting the invitation and being today with us here.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation and I look forward to having a conversation with you.
Awesome. Okay, would you like to start with the introduction and presenting who you are, where you are working, and all that stuff?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Zach Gentry. I'm the CEO of a company called Concert. We're involved in digital transformation of what we call the AECO industry, which is architects, engineers, contractors, and owners all around the creation of buildings. Creating buildings is the second largest industry in the world, representing about 13.5% of all economic productivity. Unfortunately, it's also one of the least productive industries. So we have an uphill battle, but we think we have the solution. So that's what we've been working on for about the last 4 years. Prior to that, I've been about 20 years with digital transformations of other kinds, working mostly with IoT devices in the building technologies area.
Amazing. Yeah, I definitely understand what you mean there. We just started like a discussion with one of the companies that are interested in digital transformation, and they are actually from your field as well. And when they started speaking about their pain points and the issues that they have, I'm sure we will speak about that very soon in this episode as well. But yeah, I was so surprised with like, okay, there is really a big gap in that field that can be covered by digital transformation and making stuff like the processes more automated, more digitalized, which is great. So awesome. Okay, well, let's start from the general question. That is, what is your understanding of digital transformation? How we need to see it from your side?
Well, so digital transformation, it can mean a lot of things, but I think the most important thing that it means is that there's some manual process which phases of automation can improve, reduce risk, improve the clock time of getting things done, and for many companies, frankly, can increase their profit. The reason that it's challenging is because the things that you used to watch happen under your own watch suddenly are happening automatically, and there's a fear that those transformations are actually going to cause some sort of data loss or other kinds of more serious risks, as well as the general risks that you have about sharing your data or losing control of your data. So digital transformation is a broad category of thing where companies are taking manual processes and automating them.
Awesome. Yes, definitely. So when you are saying about fear, I'm always asking about the budget fear. I think a lot of customers or like people, when they think about digital transformation, first thing that they are thinking about or they're afraid of is the budget that they should put in digital transformation, right? So what do you think about it? Is there a way that we can manage that budget or at least count or expect some amount of money that we will need to spend on digital transformation?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So it's a people and processes question, right? How much are you going to spend on people and how much are you going to spend on processes? And it's always an investment, right? With an uncertain outcome. So those are always bad things for business. Most of the times when businesses want to make investments, they have an expectation of return. And with digital transformation objectives, often it's difficult to quantify just what the benefit would be. Now we know, looking back over productivity gains we've had in almost every industry, that all of these digital transformations we've had over the last 30 years have resulted in major improvements. But each one of those had a certain amount of risk associated with it that people had to overcome. So the budget, I think the way that you look at the budget is you have to first start with some sort of expectation about what the gain is
Yeah.
going to render. And I always
Mm-hmm.
put those in three buckets. So you're either going to increase revenue, you're going to reduce costs, or you're going to reduce risk. And each of
Mm-hmm.
those has a financial metric associated with it. Usually when I talk to customers, it's going to be some combination of those three things that is
Mm-hmm.
indicative of what they're going to get as a benefit.
Right. And when we are speaking about this benefit, I think that is one of the points that is motivating when we are already starting, right? But there is also this fear, which we were speaking about before we started this episode, about the fear that people or employees have when we are speaking about digital transformation and including people that should participate in it, right? So, do you have any tricks or like suggestions how we can calm down people that are actually they supposed to be in this change?
Well, I think there's a strategy question for those of us that are involved in digital transformation as much as anything. Um, I think the starting point is if you come from a top-down perspective and say, we're going to change this process, and these folks have been brought in to do it for you, either a company like mine, which is a software company, or like
Mm-hmm.
yours, which is a consulting firm.
Yeah.
Most people will resist that pretty significantly. So there has to be a bottoms-up
Mm-hmm.
component as well. The way that I've usually, from a strategic point of view, the way that I've usually handled that is I've usually tried to pinpoint someone in particular who we can make a hero out of for the
Yeah.
execution of whatever the project is. So in your case, if it's a consulting project, you may have a senior manager who you're communicating with who would bring you in to make
Right.
this happen. For us, it might be someone on a digital design team. So we're
Mm-hmm.
working a lot with people that are working with project managers, digital project managers. To that extent, if we can make one of them look like a hero within their firm for doing one of those three things, reducing costs, increasing revenue, or reducing risk, we will find the groundswell of support underneath it. The
Yes.
fear that everyone has is that a process that used to take 10 people to do now takes two. And what do you do with the other eight
Right.
people?
Yeah.
So it's almost one of those things that can't be helped unless you can make people, also feel that those eight people are going to be doing something else that's quite a bit more
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah, agree. I think when we are speaking about digital transformation generally as a ghost running there all around, it's similar to AI, and there's a fear that is coming with AI that it can replace a lot of people, a lot of professions. And I'm always saying that it's all about people learning new stuff, even during that change. So when you have this change going and you are managing to catch something from it and learning new thing, you can't be replaced. You will just be on the other spot, making sure, for example, that this process is working, or like you are doing something that is helping or supporting this process. So I think being afraid of being replaced because of automating processes and being like having digitalization in the world, that's something that can be escaped if you are learning something new and you are concentrated on the self development, and you can still support that change rather than just staying there waiting when you will be replaced from it.
Yeah,
So
AI is in a lot of industries the ultimate
yeah,
manifestation of digital transformation, right? Because you're
agree.
transforming, almost in some cases, people believe out of people into machines. I don't think it's going to work that way. It's
Yeah.
you know, and by the way, my industry, the what we call eco industry, architects, engineers, contractors, and owners, is one of those industries that most of the people who are prognosticating about where AI is going to make the most impact
Hmm.
have said is going to be the most heavily impacted. So there have
Hmm.
been studies, I think Goldman Sachs was one of them, said that the architecture industry will reduce by 40% when AI is fully
Wow.
implemented. The
Hmm.
reality is that that's not, that's a really jaundiced way of looking at the world, right?
Yeah.
It's to say that if we had AI to help us with our workflows, that the only thing that we would do is do exactly what we do today, but just with AI instead of people. And that's not the way
Hmm.
it works. It's never worked that way. What actually it means is
Agree.
that now 40% of people's work is going to be handled by machines, which will enable them to do all of those other things that they wanted to do. It's been that way with
Exactly.
every kind of
Yes.
workflow.
Yes.
So
Agree.
as we think about AI as the next manifestation of digital transformation, we should really just start to think about it in terms of what would that free up in terms of time, just as we
Hmm.
think now today, what would that free up in terms of time for people to do that they couldn't do before?
Yes. Agree. I think it's always like when I'm remembering those old magazines when we were just introduced to robots and the machines that are replacing people in factories, for example. I think
Yeah.
it's similar to that when people were like in panic, oh my God, we are replaced by machines. But we still need those people that are fixing those machines. So it's coming back to the point that, again, if you are learning something new, you are learning about those machines, you are learning about AI and digital transformation. You are still in a need. Like, you can be used somewhere else and just supporting or fixing AI or like anything that is there because it's still based on the human knowledge that is transferred to machines.
No doubt about that. And you know, we make most of our cars still on assembly lines. Many of the Much of the heavy machinery is now automated, but you still
Hmm.
need people to do inspections and you still need people to manage the
Exactly.
machines. There probably has been some slight reduction, but you might also say
Hmm.
that the availability of cars, particularly in other parts of the world, is much higher because we've
Yeah.
automated it. So
Yes, agree. And there is always this phrase of human error when we are afraid of the mistakes that people are doing. But I think we should have, or I think there already exists some phrase that is about technical errors when basically same AI as it is based on the data that you're providing to it. So it still can have some errors there because of missing data, which we still need to fill in. Awesome. Well, one more thing, as I am sure you have great experience there. So, could you walk us through the different stages or phases of digital transformation that you experienced? Like, are there any highlights from the process that you usually have?
yeah, so the way that I've always been I've always been selling stuff to folks, right? So digital transformation the is always somewhere underneath because most of the time I've been selling things that one might say are um, evangelical selling. It was trying
Hmm.
to do something. For example, in building automation, if we were doing something that was using wireless instead of wired communication, people had to get over the fact that that there's benefits to it, but there's also the perception of risk. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think the first thing with any kind of digital transformation is a summation of the benefits that are going to accrue
Right.
both today and tomorrow, because we're always
Hmm.
selling on futures in the digital transformation world.
Agree.
So, to the extent that you can create a picture for a person of what their work, of what the world will look like in a
Yeah.
new creation, they're likely to be able to understand that better than the pain that they're likely to go through in the short term for investing
Hmm.
in something that's new to them. So I think part of the uh, process of digital transformation is first storytelling about
Hmm.
where we want to be, and a lot of that also is quite honestly related to the idea that there's a financial incentive as well, right?
Yes.
The next thing is really about again, I think you can't be successful. You may find this in your own business. I certainly have found this over 20 plus years working with
Hmm.
people in digital transformation. You can't be successful unless someone who is directly responsible for the outcome is
Yes.
not only able to see the benefits, but is also able to advance themselves by virtue of the fact
Agree.
that they work with you.
Yeah.
Because what they'll then do is work heroically with you to
Hmm.
ensure that the things work out. And as you're probably aware, certainly I've experienced this in my own career. Digital transformation never works out perfectly. Right?
Yes. First phase is always very difficult.
Yeah, the timeline changes. There's resistors.
Hmm.
There's unforeseen circumstances. We all have probably more optimism than we should.
For sure.
So we we project things that people just can't deliver on for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so you sort of get mired in a slump, you have to have someone who's going to pull you through on the other side, someone who's
Hmm.
going to be at those internal meetings and really help you in places where you need the help. So
Right. Right.
my objective maybe for uh, your listeners is just find the people inside the organization who will work heroically for you to create the outcome that you
Yes.
want.
Yes, agree. I think globally, what I like to call it is to have the ownership during the process. So we have people that should be responsible for some spots and the parts specifically. So we have that connection of the chain, how something should be changed, and still knowing that there is one person that is responsible for this change, and he or she is able to update to make sure that he has like all the details, so he can provide those details to other people that are in under that layer. So I think having that sense of ownership is very important, specifically in a team where there are like more than 10 people, I will say, because when the team is very small, it's still very easy to do the change, right? Because it's like just those 10 people and you can kind of communicate between each other in one group. But when we are speaking about companies that are deciding to have digital transformation and there are like 100 plus employees, it's very important to have that ownership and having the people that are leading the process specifically. And
Right.
when you mentioned about those people, one thing that came to my mind is actually the experience. So, what do you think about the experience that people should have when deciding on digital transformation? Is it very important to have those very experienced people, or it's fine to have like mid-level or junior people and just leading them by one,
You
two
know
people?
that's interesting. The generally my most successful vector is always to come in very high, CEO level if I can, and then to find someone who would be part of the
Hmm.
department that we would be working with for whatever reason. In my career, that's been real estate or development, and then within that, to find someone within that organization who can be your internal champion,
Yeah.
and to make it clear to that person that this is the project that will make them successful within their organization
Hmm.
so that they get the appropriate praise if it does turn out to work well. I've almost never, I think the problem with working with junior people is that oftentimes they may not be given the kind of respect.
Hmm.
There could be a lot of reasons for it. But if they're too far down in the organization, they're not going to have the kind of opportunity, even if they're really, really talented, they're not going to have the
Yeah.
kind of opportunity, and it can often be overlooked, right? So
Hmm.
I think you need to probably be mid to high in order to obtain success. Now,
Hmm.
those people who are successful at that kind of at that stage, that executive sponsored stage, which is an important part of my sales process always been, also have people that they bring with them, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
someone who was successful as a result of a digital transformation that you created with them are going to have three or four people within their team that then
Right.
get pulled up
Yeah.
with them. So
Hmm.
those junior people are very critical, and frankly, they're the people that are sometimes willing to break down a wall with their bare hands in order to see something successful. So you need them. But you really
Yes.
do need the executive sponsor, or you're going to have a very difficult time with it.
Hmm. Agree. Well, and we spoke about the challenges, and there are some challenges. Are there any other challenges that are coming to your mind when we are starting or in the process of digitalization?
Well, I mean, so I think the biggest for me. So I work in a particular industry, right? And in
Hmm.
my industry, the biggest challenge that we have is that we don't have a centralized space where everyone operates.
Yeah.
So you can think of, I've built products. And so to the extent that you build products, you work with outside agencies, for contract manufacturing or outsourced
Hmm.
software development. But the reality is that you own those resources. And so their output
Right.
is your output. In a construction project, you actually don't have anyone who ob- obtains primary ownership of the data. So
Mm-hmm.
an architect creates the digital design, and then the contractor and fabricators are responsible for the means and methods of the delivery of that design. And there's this bright line that's been developed between those where
Yeah.
neither of them will enter into the other space for fear of risk, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to be responsible for that. So they're contractually in these separate silos. And then an owner, which you might think would be primarily responsible for making sure everyone's coordinated, often has an wants to be at arm's length to the actual work that's done, so that if there's a problem, they can blame those people for the work that,
Mm-hmm.
for shoddy work or for time delays. So
Yeah.
that means one of the problems with digital transformation, most industries, when you think about the way that they're successful, your own business as well, the, you mentioned Jira. Now, what's the great thing about
Yeah.
Jira? Everyone's working in real time in a cloud-based environment.
Yeah.
In the construction industry, that's not the way it works. So that the architect has their data, the owner has their data, and the contractor has their data, and they
Mm-hmm.
have these puncture points in which they
Yeah.
share the data. But it's always, that means that if they share something and then they continue to create on their side of the fence, that new creation may not be part of what the contractor is working on. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, one of the biggest problems uh, in my industry, and one of the things that we're trying to solve with Concert, is how do we get people out of these silos? How do we
Yes.
make it so that people can be comfortable with sharing data and not feel like
Mm-hmm.
they're violating any principles of trust?
Yeah.
So this is just a quick plug. So what we basically do is, in the current world, there's no an architect feels uncomfortable sharing information for two reasons. One, they worry about someone stealing their IP, which is
Mm-hmm.
in some cases a legitimate risk.
Yeah.
And the other is that they fear that they're going to share something, and then the thing that they share is going to be modified in some way,
Yeah.
built in the
And
way that it
used.
was modified,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have control over the final product.
Right.
So what we did as a starting point with Concert was we created a way that the information can be made permanent, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say that it can't be changed, but we create an environment where we use digital cryptography to
Mm-hmm.
fix a digital fingerprint for every file, and then we store those digital fingerprints on a blockchain record. So when I share something with someone, I can be assured that the data that I share with them is fingerprinted, and the date and time and method of which it was by which it was sent is known.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's not all we do, but that was the starting point for trying to create this environment where people could operate in the
Yeah.
AEC industry in the same way that they do in the industries that you work with every day: healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
finance,
Yes. Right.
manufacturing, right? So
Yeah.
that's what we do. But that's I think one of the biggest problems for our particular
Mm-hmm.
industry, but for other industries in general, is if the data isn't confederated in a significant way, you can have
Mm-hmm.
digital transformations that are internal but
Yes.
don't get to all the process needs that would happen in a project.
Yeah, agree. And we had this experience at the beginning of 2024 when basically we had this customer who had very sensitive data, and he had it like they had their own standards and what was required from our company. And I think this is very good example of how we need to treat data is by teaching people that there are specific standards of using the data. So what we did, we got the ISO 27001 certificate for our company, which is basically helping our employees to learn about the data management and how you need to treat the data that is there accessible to you, but you still can't do anything with it, right? And the standards and the security and all this stuff. I think with having digitalization, that is also very important to have the knowledge, specifically as you brought the challenge of managing the data or how we need to treat it. So I think having those standards are really helping. So knowing about those standards and being able to understand them and using those standards in the process. So specifically with companies that are supporting with digital transformation, it's very important to know that their employees, first of all, they know how to treat the data, and they can also teach you how to do that after you're digitalized or yeah, on other cases.
Agreed.
Awesome. Yeah. And well, what when we are speaking about processes and challenges, I think with the world going so fast ahead of us, there is one thing that we always need to catch, and that's the emerging technologies. So, what do you think about the technologies that are there now or there are in near future that will help with digital transformation?
Yeah. So there's, I mean, the elephant in the room is obviously AI, and
Yes.
you really can't escape that because it's happening. I look at it in terms of what we might call interpolative AI and extrapolative AI. So people have other names for it, but
Hmm.
uh, interpolative AI, meaning that what you're looking at is a process that you do today that is, even if automated, is automated between people where the steps have to be manually determined, right? And
Hmm.
AI can look at that uh, as a sort of oracle on the processes that are there and identify things that we couldn't identify ourselves, like
Yeah.
times that are longer than expected. So anomaly detection within interpolative processes is going to mean that digital transformation is not only going to be about what what it helps you to do, but also that the entire process is going to be reworked by a machine that
Hmm.
can oversee what you're doing and pay attention to the things that you just don't have the time to do. And then an extrapolative AI, I think we're going to be able to view things in the future that we weren't
Hmm.
able to view today. So in our industry, in the architectural industry, there's some firms that are really, really, I think, cutting edge, looking at
Hmm.
um, not just a single design, but simulating 100,000 designs using
Yeah.
AI and then creating optimizations based on certain criteria. So both looking internally and looking externally, we can see that AI is going to make the digital transformation world a heck of a lot easier. The other one, it's minor, but it's not unimportant, and it's available to everyone. Is this kind of uh, move toward no code, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you're seeing this as well.
I do.
Companies like Zapier or Power Automate make it so that the ability to do the kinds of automations that used to take, a fairly significant amount of expertise, make it
Yes.
available to everyone, right?
Hmm.
So you don't need to wait for IT to do a lot of the automations that are now available to,
Yeah.
just about any person. And so
Agree.
that's where I see kind of two things that are happening. One is this democratization of workflow management and digital
Hmm.
transformation, so anyone can do it, and also you know the coming of the machine.
Hmm. Agree. Well, both of them are very important points, and thank you for them. And I think this will be my last question, and it's about the advice that you would offer to the to other companies or like to individuals that want to start their digital transformation.
So, and I'll make this just as a general comment. So businesses at some level, and it starts at the top and it trickles down. Everybody has to have a sense that what they're doing has profit, right? I mean, that's why
Yes.
we're in business. And so if you start with a perspective that you ask, as a person that is perceiving something that might have a digital transformative component
Hmm.
to it, ask yourself, is it increasing my revenue? Is it reducing my costs, or is it reducing my risk? And then
Yeah.
the second question is, to what extent? And if
Hmm.
you can answer those questions with an affirmative answer, the likelihood is that you can you can justify any digital transformation, right?
Agree.
Most of the time, the stuff that gums up digital transformations is that there's an unclear objective.
Mm-hmm.
So
For sure.
clear that if it's clear that we're doing this so that we can spend less time on a particular function, and
Mm-hmm.
that there's a cost associated with that function, and now we can save some money for doing it. Digital transformation is just the means by which you deliver that thing. So
Yes.
that's what I think. Yeah, the advice that I have is make a business case.
Okay, that's yeah. I mean, giving right questions is very important, and also, as you mentioned, having that business case and having people, as we mentioned before, that can support on digital transformation is very important. So yes, well, thank you so much, Zach. Anything that you would like to add before we'll end this episode?
No, thank you very much for the opportunity. It's been a joy, and I look forward to seeing it come out.
Yes, awesome. Well, thank you again and have a good day.
You too. Bye bye.